And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. We have some somber news to report this evening. Gerrit Cole is going to be out for the season, most likely for the New York Yankees, as it's been recommended to him that he needs Tommy John surgery to repair an injury that he suffered to his elbow. Now, the Yankees are no strangers to some pitching injuries already this spring training. Luis Gil is going to be missing about a month of the season. Giancarlo Stanton could very well miss the season as well, not just due to one elbow, but both serious elbow issues for Giancarlo Stanton as well. The Yankees are certainly going through it so far in spring training. I think they're the one team more than any other right now that just wants to see this season finally get here before another player goes down due to injury. They've been hit pretty hard by injuries, and Gerrit Cole by far is the biggest that we've seen so far during spring training. Now, this is the type of injury that can derail a season. Hopefully they're able to rebound from this. I seriously doubt they'll be able to get somebody to fill the shoes of his caliber. And remember, they're already going to be without Gil. They brought up Stroman to be in that starting rotation. He was expected to be the long man out of the bullpen to start the year. Meanwhile, they're still going to have to figure out what to do after Juan Soto left in free agency, and they're not going to have Giancarlo Stanton to help be a part of that answer. A lot of big questions as far as what the future holds for the New York Yankees. This was a team that I figured was going to be in the ALCS by the end of the year. They looked like they were still that good of a team. I think this really does open the door now for the Boston Red Sox, for the Baltimore Orioles to win the AL East. And who knows what happens with the Yankees? Do they ultimately decide to go after another starting pitcher to fill the role of Gerrit Cole? I imagine that's the road they'll try to go down first, whether it be another trade, whether it be going after a free agent that's still out there. There are a lot of different avenues that they could choose to go down, but I do expect them to add some starting pitching at some point here in the next couple of days. But very unique time right now in the AL East, and specifically with the New York Yankees. I mean, we've seen the Dallas Mavericks really go through it the past year, or the past month or two anyway, in the NBA with all the injuries that they have. They were very lucky to even finish the game tonight with enough healthy bodies to be able to complete the game. They're right now on the minimum, or just barely fielding the league minimum of number of players that they need before they have to forfeit games. That's how tough the injury bug is getting for them on the NBA side. In Major League Baseball, we haven't even started this season yet, and I'm already declaring this season largely a lost one for the New York Yankees. Now, I'm not going to say never, for the New York Yankees. They are the Yankees. I do not expect them to add payroll, certainly to this point. They were already hesitant to do so already. Now, this is a team that does not measure success by, hey, we snuck into the playoffs and won a wild card round. They measure it by championships won. So if they're going to do something, I imagine they're going to do something very big. We're talking a Dylan Cease type of a trade, something along those lines, if they're still at least in contention by the time we get to the All-Star break. To begin the year here, though, I'm imagining they'll go for a lower cost option, maybe a fifth, sixth starter type that can at least eat some innings to begin the year. That way they can figure out what their long-term plan is going to be. Are they good enough offensively without Soto and Stanton to be able to weather the storm? How quickly does Heel get back? What do they do with the void in that rotation now with Gerrit Cole going down? And of course, Max Fried is now the big addition to that rotation. He immediately steps to the front of the line as far as the names that could take the ball on opening day. Carlos Rodon is still there. They still have a couple of names that should be able to get the job done. But this season could quickly slip down the tubes if that second opinion for Gerrit Cole does not come back with any positive news. Now, let's look on the bright side here. Let's say that second opinion comes back and says, hey, you can go ahead and rest this thing, miss a month or two, and then you'll be back around June, July. Not out of the realm of possibility. We have no clue. I'm not a doctor. But I am saying if the Yankees think it's worth it to at least get a second opinion, maybe there's enough question there that they could get him back at some point this year. That's the pie in the sky, silver lining, maybe this could happen in 1 in a million chance type of scenario. Do I think it's likely? No, not a chance. I think there's very little likelihood that any type of positivity is going to come out of this for the New York Yankees. I think this is just biding themselves time, hoping against hope that maybe they can get some good news. But ultimately, once you start getting recommended for Tommy John surgery, almost every single pitcher ultimately decides to get that done. I remember one pitcher of note from the New York Yankees in the past decided to forego the Tommy John surgery and hope his elbow would heal on its own. He did try to pitch for a period of time through the injury, from what I remember. That was Masahiro Tanaka. We'll have to see how he does, but this has got to be a death knell to the New York Yankees fan base as far as their hopes for winning the World Series this year. Dodgers are seen as the prohibitive favorites on the National League side. The Yankees were seen as one of maybe 3 or 4 teams that could get there this year, at least to the World Series. Now, do they have enough to really get over the hump? They don't have Juan Soto this year. The thought process behind this was that, hey, we're going to have a better team for the 26-man lineup, or a 26-man actual group of players that we have, but we don't necessarily have the top-end talent in Juan Soto. Well, now you're going to be without Gerrit Cole. That's a big loss for a team that absolutely needed to show some positivity after losing Juan Soto to the crosstown rival New York Mets. Mets have been no stranger to injuries themselves so far in spring training, but I think the offense at least should be enough to carry them through the early parts of the season. Once we get to the trade deadline, I do expect the Mets to be active, and I would expect them to get those pitchers back that are injured as well. They seem to be a little bit better set up for the season, especially if Gerrit Cole is out the remainder of the season. Alrighty, welcome in Mark, Ryan, Holly, Steven. Appreciate you guys joining us. Teal Pinstripes, appreciate you joining us as well. What's up? Just having some fun with a lady today. Did a lot of home improvement projects today. Goodness, the Yankees are really going through it. Yes, they are, Holly. Like I've been saying, the Yankees should have went all out for Burns. Now look. Well, I will say this. Before the injury to Gerrit Cole, they had a solid 1 through 5. They had Stroman in a depth position, but they didn't have much depth beyond him. The 7, 8, 9 guys that you're going to need throughout the season, they didn't really go after those guys. So I think if they had added some depth, somebody in that 6, 7, 8 role, like a Griffin Canning like the Mets did, or like a Lance Lynn type, or a Kyle Gibson, that at least have some in-house options to turn to. Andrew Heaney signed for 1 year, $5 million. I bet you the Yankees right now would back up a Brinks truck if they could undo that deal and get him to come to the Yankees. Same thing for Jose Quintana, who's shown the ability to pitch well for a New York team. Now, this is going to be a tough year for the Yankees if they don't get in some starting pitching immediately here. They could really fall behind early in the month of April, and then by the time you get to the All-Star break, it's not worth going after one of the top-flight free agents or one of the top-flight trade acquisitions at the deadline, because you're going to be too far back of contention. At that point, the questions become, are you a seller at that point? It's going to be a tough year for the Yankees if Gerrit Cole is indeed out for the year, which by all accounts seems like the likely thing at the moment. But as far as Burns goes, they're really up against it as far as finances for what they're comfortable doing. They want to try to avoid being in the Cohen tax. Now with being without Giancarlo Stanton for probably at least a month or two, most likely the entirety of the season, being without Luis Gil for at least a month, maybe a little bit more, and now Gerrit Cole possibly being lost for the entire 2025 season, maybe even the first half of 2026. Things are very dark right now in New York Yankee land, and we'll see if they can rebound from it. But with that being said, with them already having significant injury issues, I wouldn't say that they're going to invest even more money as a result. This isn't a situation where you look at and say, hey, this is a move that puts us over the top, that makes us win the World Series. And when you're a franchise that measures success in World Series won, not how many playoff rounds you get to, not how many playoff victories you have, not just getting to the postseason, not being above 500, but actually how many World Series victories you have. When you measure success by that barometer and you're already missing your best starting pitcher, one of your 3 or 4 best hitters in your lineup right now, and probably your 3rd or 4th best starting pitcher to enter the season, things are not looking as sunny right now for the New York Yankees, and I would not expect them to add significant payroll to solve that issue. Do not expect the Yankees to throw money at this. Now, as far as Burns, if say they had done something like this earlier and not been so stingy on the money, well, that would probably have required them offloading some other salary, whether it be Marcus Stroman being traded away, whether that be DJ LeMahieu, finally agreeing to a deal and letting his salary go to another team. There's a couple other salaries that they could have chosen to, not bring in. For instance, they could have chosen not to make the trade for Cody Bellinger, but then again, then you're just trading one problem, the starting pitching issue that you have right now, to turn it into another continuing issue for an impact bat. They needed to add 2 impact bats to me this offseason. They only added basically 1.5, depending on how you feel about Bellinger and Goldschmidt. But to me, they were still light on offense, and the only other way to really save the money that they would have needed to get a starting pitcher of Burns' caliber would have been to forego one of those other moves. I don't think you could have done both with the New York Yankees with their mindset of trying to stay underneath that tax threshold. In fact, I still expect them to try to trim another $5 million from their salaries that they have committed already. That was an expectation even with a fully healthy roster. Now without Gerrit Cole, Gil, and Stanton, I'm expecting that cost cutting to get significantly more. Maybe even pieces like Goldschmidt, pieces on 1-year deals, could be dealt at the deadline as they might turn into one of the biggest sellers. Now, the Yankees, when they have sold in the past, think back to when the Cubs won the World Series that year. They traded away Aroldis Chapman and got a king's ransom the one time they turned around and sold. I'm sure the market is going to remember that. But just remember, when the Yankees do sell, they do it very, very well, and they set themselves up for a lot of success. But again, this is a team that measures itself by how many championships they win, not by how many postseasons they get to. And I don't think there's a move that they can pivot to or have pivoted to be able to fix that issue. Even if they had brought in a Corbin Burns, they would be in the very similar spot to me from where they entered the season as far as one of the favorites in the American League. But by no means would I put them over the Los Angeles Dodgers to win the World Series. By no means would I put them over a team like the Texas Rangers or the Boston Red Sox or the Baltimore Orioles. I think they're kind of in that same group that any one of those teams could advance to the World Series. And, maybe they get lucky against the Dodgers, but I think on paper, everybody thinks that the Dodgers are the prohibitive favorites. David does beat Goliath every now and again, and it's going to take that type of effort this year to knock off the Dodgers. I'm not sure it's a wise investment for the Yankees to double down on this roster that's already going to be missing multiple pieces just to begin the year, let alone for the long-term future of this ball club. Alrighty, try to catch up on a few of these comments here. Boston wins the division. Well, we'll revisit kind of the power rankings here in just a moment that we've done over the last couple of days and adjust where we think the rotation, where the lineup now stand for the Yankees, because both of those are going to drop precipitously without Stanton, Gil, and now Gerrit Cole. Stroman looking nice now. I'll put it this way. He's at least a solid veteran to have. Am I expecting him to be a number 1, number 2 type starter for the Yankees that Gerrit Cole was? Not even close. Am I expecting him to be a solid fill-in for Luis Gil for a month? Sure, I'll give you that one. But I'm saying the money that they could have used, if they had offloaded that salary, they could have given it to another impact bat and solved their lineup issue. That way they could look at the New York Mets and say, hey, Mets, you have a great lineup. You're weathering the pitching injuries that you're going to have to start the season. You also have depth in your minor leagues to be able to cover some of those injury issues in that rotation for a month or two. And you're getting your rotation pieces back. Plus, you're expected to add some more pieces at the deadline to that rotation. Meanwhile, the New York Yankees would have had at least another bat to weather the injuries early in the season, to where maybe at the trade deadline, you're still in good enough spot to be a wild card contender, and maybe if you get a number one starter, you put yourself right back in the mix to be at the or getting to the World Series. But right now, they got too many holes in that roster as currently structured. Devlin, the Yankees have too many big empty contracts to go for Burns. Kind of true there. I'll agree with you there, Steven. Greg, welcome in. You doubt the Dodgers are worried about the Mets? I don't think the Dodgers are worried about anybody aside from just being healthy. I'll put it that way. Looks like the Tanks might be looking for Dylan Cease. I think you meant Yanks, but I'm not sure if you even meant that to be a slippage there. But I like that one. Dylan Cease might be a good option for them. Heel, welcome in. Ocean View, welcome back. Well, Boston is licking their lips at winning the division this year. Yes, I would say that as well. Let's see, Ocean View Coffee Shop. The Rays are getting almost an entire pitching staff back from injury. True, and you kind of bring up the Rays there. I want to get into the second biggest story of the day, is that the Tampa Bay Rays are being pressured to either build a new stadium or sell the team by Major League Baseball's commissioner, Rob Manfred, and several other owners across Major League Baseball. A lot of this has to do with revenue sharing money that is going to the Tampa Bay Rays and how they might not get their share of that because of the situation that they're in. Now, their president basically is trying to make the case that we would like to stay in this area in Florida. Major League Baseball would like the team to stay in that area as well. They just want them to be able to move to a more populated area to where they can get more people to turn out for games, generate more fan interest, things along those lines. But very curious tonight that The Athletic was one of the first to report anyway that Major League Baseball itself is pressuring an owner to sell the team right now. Usually you don't see that unless there's gross negligence being done by the owner or just some type of huge oversight being done in the organization or some type of political fallout on that side as well. You don't really see that too often, especially in Major League Baseball. Think to other owners who have been pressured to sell by other owners, by their own commissioner. Think of Donald Sterling, owners like that. Now, I'm not saying the Rays have that same type of an issue, but what I am saying is that the Rays have not been run very well as far as an ownership basis. They haven't been willing to invest in the team. The reason why you have that revenue sharing is so that you can continue to add to your ball club, that you can make up for any losses that you might incur during the season, that you might share in the revenue of other ball clubs so that you're still profitable enough as well to maintain whatever level of competition you are. Now the Rays, they've been a very good team for a long time now. But we've started to see them start slipping now after they made a couple of poor investments with Wander Franco. All of his off-the-field legal issues, we'll kind of leave those to the side. But they haven't really developed as much top-end starting pitching talent as they used to. They no longer have the David Prices, the James Shields, the Blake Snells coming through the works here. Now, they do have McClanahan still there. They got a couple other guys that they're hoping to have nice years out of for that Rays organization. But they used to have 2, 3, 4 guys that you would consider an ace on another ball club. Think back to the years where they had Matt Garza among several other starting pitchers. This has been a factory for great starting pitchers there in Tampa Bay, and now that cupboard is starting to run a little bare, and we're starting to see the lack of fruits for their labor, if you will. They haven't been able to pivot. They haven't been able to get more successful pieces in there. They haven't been able to spend the money to keep up with the Joneses, as you would say, to at least stay competitive with other ball clubs over the last couple of years. Now, the Rays, I think, still have a decent team. Decent, I would say, being in the bottom 10-ish range. But this is a Rays organization that is used to being at least in wild card contention year in and year out, even with the small budget. But now with Major League Baseball stepping in and several other owners actively trying to get the owner to come up with a solution, whether that be moving the team a little bit closer to the city of Tampa Bay and building there in that metropolitan area and getting more fan interest there himself, or selling it to several interested parties and letting them take a crack at it. So we'll have to see how this thing goes, but Tampa Bay Rays, keep an eye out for what's going on there. This is just the tip of the iceberg that's finally being reported on by The Athletic, and I would expect this story to develop as the year goes along. Hopefully we get some resolution by the All-Star break as to whether or not they're going to either A, go ahead and sell the team, or B, build. Even if they just choose a direction, that would be at least a positive movement forward for the Rays. This has been an ongoing issue for years. Their hurricane damage there to the Trop was significant. I think I heard estimates in the $70-ish million range. And honestly, when you have that much damage there, let's go ahead and start looking at the idea of moving to another stadium at this point. If it's going to cost that much to repair the damage done, go ahead and just see what you can do with your being in a minor league ballpark or wherever you're having to play your games this year to really solve the issues there at the ballpark. But the long-term answer should be playing in a brand new stadium somewhere where you can generate more fan interest, and we'll see which way they decide to go there. Obviously, I hope this doesn't happen, but the Yankees are one Aaron Judge injury away from their season being more over than Jover. That's a pretty good one. I will say this, without having Gerrit Cole in the starting rotation, this is a lineup that I don't think can sustain that the limitations of their starting pitching going into the year. Now, had they still had Juan Soto, another aircraft carrier there, without the injury to Giancarlo Stanton, maybe I'd revisit my discussion here. But I believe with the injury to Gerrit Cole, it's going to be too much to overcome, especially in the first month of the season, with Heel down as well, and Stanton likely out at least a month or two, very likely the entire year. If Gerrit Cole indeed does miss the year, I don't see any reason why Giancarlo Stanton should be rushing himself back either when he has both elbow issues. But the Yankees right now, I think they're a 500 ball club. Steven, I think I'm right there with you. They're a 500 ball club without Gerrit Cole in their rotation right now. Judge has to be wrapped in bubble wrap if they expect to stay over 500. I'll put it this way. Judge has only been able to stay healthy a couple of times in his career for an entire year. He usually has a couple of different injury issues throughout the season, and right now they do not have the depth in that lineup to be able to sustain it. And certainly that rotation now cannot carry them without Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is going to have to, go nuclear this year to really keep this team in contention, especially if they hope to be any type or anywhere close to the top of the division. Wild card right now might be the best case scenario for them to sneak in, and maybe they make a run to the ALCS. But I don't think they're getting over the Los Angeles Dodgers at any point this year. Ryan, can you see the Alcantara move to the Yankees? We can go ahead and visit that one. In fact, let's go ahead and pull it up for you guys. All right, baseball trade values. Let me refresh this page for us here. Just to kind of see what it would cost if they were to get another starting pitcher in here to at least make it manageable for the Yankees to be without Gerrit Cole. So Alcantara just coming off of his own Tommy John. His value right now is at 52. It's elevated very recently. That price is continuing to go up. So, maybe you can get the deal done right now. But let's see what it would cost if you're the Yankees. 52. You're not including Wells. Chisholm, no. Dominguez might have to be the headliner, but I think you would still hold out. Volpe, no. You're not giving up Heel or Schmidt. So Lombard would have to be one of your first guys here. Will Warren would have to be another one. Spencer Jones would have to be another one. But another thing I want you guys to remember, the Marlins are looking for teenagers. They're looking for guys 16 to 20 years old to be able to come in and be a part of that next competitive team. They're not looking for guys that are MLB ready. They're not looking for AA prospects. They're looking for young players. So when I say Warren would have to be included, that's because of how high a value he is here for the Yankees. You'd probably have to include another team to offload or to send him to, so you can send a younger piece to the Marlins. But let's just go with the younger pieces from the Yankees for now, just to kind of show you how hard of a deal this would be for them to make. Arias would have to be your second piece here, 19-year-old player. Then your next guy, Lelane, is only 20 years old. Perez, there's four pieces, and you're still $20 million away from value there for Alcantara. Do I think it's a possible move for the Yankees at this point? I do not. Yankees are still a playoff team. You think so, David? You think so? I'll put it this way. I'm not ruling them out for wild card contention. I do think they will add some starting pitching, lower level starting pitching. We're talking Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson type acquisition, something to kind of get them through early in the season. Then as they go through the year, I think that's when they'll decide whether they want to go after a Dylan Cease at that point. Maybe they decide to do it right now. In fact, let's see what the cost would be to be able to get something like that done. To the Padres we go. We're at 33. Let me go ahead and clear these pieces out of here first. Now the Padres, they're looking for some major league pieces coming back right now, or at least guys that are closer to major league ready. This would be an easier trade for the Yankees to make. All right, so we're going to start with Cease going to the Yanks. I think Lombard would probably have to be your first piece going. Will Warren might have to go as well. Give them a starting pitcher going back the other way. In fact, I think I will do that. Arias, I think that gets you very close as far as value. Might be even over, actually. Let's take out Will Warren. Let's go Lelane and Selvage. So there's your trade. That gets you a starting pitcher, somebody at the top of that rotation. Does this get you a good as starting pitcher as Gerrit Cole? No. But this is still a pretty good, at least, solution for them if they want to stay in competition for at least a wild card spot or maybe even the division crown. But I still don't think they have any chance of winning the World Series without Gerrit Cole, without the pieces that they've lost already. And I'm not saying I'm writing off the Yankees completely from postseason contention, but I think we can kiss their playoff hopes goodbye as far as winning the World Series. And when you're an organization that has different goals as an organization, when your goal is winning the World Series, not just getting to the postseason, you have to start realizing that this might not be your year. And remember, the one time they did decide to sell, about 10 years ago, is where they really were able to kind of set their organization up for future success. So I think we could be seeing something like that again here with the Yankees this year if they really come out of the gate stumbling like I'm expecting them to do so in April. Baltimore, Texas, and Seattle should form one team and just beat the damn Dodgers. Mark, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. I will say this. The Dodgers are a very prolific team, but they are not unbeatable. They're still going to lose 40, 50 games. They're still going to lose a couple of games in the postseason. They're still going to have injury issues just like every other team. And they're going to have those games where their starting pitcher that's supposed to be all-world ends up giving up 7 runs. They're going to play just like every other human being on the planet. Do they have a better overall floor for where their talent level is? Absolutely. Are they expected to be the team there that wins the World Series? Absolutely. Does that mean it's assured? Go ahead and wrap up the season for 2025, hand out the trophy, don't even bother playing the games? Goodness, no. There's still a good chance pretty much 7 or 8 teams could knock them off at some point this year on the American League and National League side. I'd say there's probably 8 or 9 teams that have a legitimate chance to win the World Series this year, just like there is every single season. It's just this year the Dodgers just seem so far out in front of everybody else that a lot of the casual fans fail to realize just how baseball actually works. That you play a series, and then you play another series, and then you play another series, and before you know it, you have played 162 games. And during that time, you'll have injuries, you'll have players play above expectations, you'll have players ultimately sour and play poorly. All kinds of things can happen in 162 games. Who knows which teams will even be healthy by the time we get to October. And let's go ahead and just pump the brakes a little bit here on the Dodgers and kind of the, expecting the Dodgers to roll over everybody. I still think they have to go out there and play the games. Do I expect the Dodgers to play very well? I do. Do I think it's going to take a best effort from some team out there to knock them off? I do. Do I think the Dodgers are going to have to play a little bit below what we expect them to in order for other teams to beat them? I am. But are those things possible? Absolutely. Let's see here. Padres are still open on trading Dylan Cease. Well, their finance guys are. Their front office is not. They are resolute in wanting to keep him and Michael King. They do not want to mess with this pitching staff. However, the finance guys might ultimately overrule the baseball decision makers there. And we've seen A.J. Preller specifically there get into big situations before and out of them very quickly. We've seen that when he first took over with the Padres, when he got the Uptons and Kimbrel, made all that big investment. They were out of the wild card situation. By the All-Star break, he divested himself of that situation, got a lot of prospects back. They make the big acquisition of Juan Soto, trading away 5 pillars of their future team. and ultimately things don't work out. They divest out of that situation, get multiple pieces back from the Yankees. They get into a big situation last year by bringing in Luis Arraez and Dylan Cease. Now they're looking to get out of both of those deals if it makes sense from a baseball perspective. Finance guys, though, might push the envelope here and force them to act a little bit earlier than otherwise might be expected. But the Padres here, I think, are still looking good as far as what they might get in return for Dylan Cease. And I think they'll be able to do it well and be able to pivot to their next contending team as well. David, I'd rather get King than Cease. I think they're about a horse apiece. But I get the argument there. King's played in New York, has at least shown the ability to handle the market. Cease, meanwhile, you'd have to figure out if he can handle the market. But David, you're saying the Yankees can still win the division and be in the series? I'm going to try to look at from your perspective. You still have Aaron Judge. Your lineup, by and large, is worse than what it was last year without Juan Soto. You're going to miss Giancarlo Stanton for likely a month or two. We'll say best case scenario, he's back mid-May, right? Say his elbow issues are overblown, even though several sources say both elbow issues have severe problems with them and will likely need him to miss the entire 2025 season. But let's say he gets back mid-May. You have Bellinger, you have Goldschmidt. Say Goldschmidt has a nice renaissance year. You figure out DJ LeMahieu has a nice renaissance year. Maybe your offense is at least acceptable enough to be without Juan Soto, and they're able to keep things afloat. On the pitching side, say things work out. You make the trade for Dylan Cease. He takes over as your number 1, 2, 3, somewhere in that mix with Fried and Rondon at the top. You have Schmidt in that rotation. You still have Stroman. But your depth is very limited as you go into the year. You understand that. You're going to get Luis Gil back probably at the end of April, beginning of May, somewhere in that range. So he'll be able to take over as one of the 2, 3 starters in that range. So you have a good rotation overall. Are they nearly as good as they were going into the year with Gerrit Cole? Certainly not, but they're still a good team. The bullpen, still the same as it was yesterday. They still have Devin Williams. They still have Luke Weaver. I would still like to have them go after an 8th inning setup guy. Let's say they go out there and add a David Robertson. Say all those things happen. That's the Yankees. The rest of the division still looks like the Baltimore Orioles, whose offense still looks pretty good. An injury to Gunnar Henderson, but he will be back sometime in late April. Probably mid-April at the earliest. You look at their starting rotation, they have a lot of good talent in there, but nobody that's a number 1. But now that was your one good thing that you had on your team was Gerrit Cole. They didn't have an answer for you when you had Gerrit Cole in that rotation. Now, would I still like Max Fried over what the Orioles have? I would say yes. Would I like say Dylan Cease coming in? I would probably like that one as well. And so I could hear your argument for having those 2 starters being better than the Baltimore Orioles. But again, you're going to get Gunnar Henderson back. That's significantly better of an offensive lineup than what the New York Yankees have at their best. The rotation, while it's not necessarily have the high highs of a Gerrit Cole at the top of their lineup or top of their rotation or a Dylan Cease or a Corbin Burns, they still have pretty good rotation. A whole bunch of 2s, 3s, and on the low end 4s in there. They're going to be without Grayson Rodriguez, but again, they have a bunch of guys in that same range, that same talent ability that I think just next man up for that same spot. I think the injury to Grayson Rodriguez is not the same as an injury to Luis Gil or Gerrit Cole for the New York Yankees. I would say that they're going to be able to plug that hole a little bit better. Now, the bullpen, I would say you do have Bautista coming back from injury. Kittredge is going to miss a couple of months. That was announced the other day as well. But this is still a good Orioles bullpen. The Yankees with Devin Williams, with Luke Weaver, a couple other nice pieces in the middle relief options like Mark Leiter and others. They're still a good bullpen as well. I wouldn't say one has necessarily a huge advantage over the other back there. But now, the gut punches that the Yankees have now suffered, with Gerrit Cole likely missing the season, with Giancarlo Stanton likely to miss at least a couple of months, how are they going to be able to produce enough offense in this lineup? Let's be realistic. The Orioles lineup, even without Gunnar Henderson in that, is at least equal to what the Yankees have to offer offensively. Once they get Gunnar Henderson back, you have, at least 2 MVP candidates on that roster. You have another Rookie of the Year candidate on that roster this year as well. And you have a couple other all-star, or at least rising stars, in Westberg and Kauser on that team as well. Rutschman, of course, is the biggest advantage in the entire league right now as a good offensive bat at the catcher spot. No other team has that type of advantage the way the Orioles have it right now. And while they're still able to deploy him at catcher, because how far offense is down at the catching position overall, they really have an ace up their sleeve there. I would still say that the Yankees, at best, are on par with the Orioles as far as their pitching now without Gerrit Cole. I would say that's about where they're going to be. And that assumes they make a trade for Dylan Cease. Now, as we go through the year, you're very limited as far as the depth in that starting rotation. I mentioned at the top of the video, maybe they make the addition of Lance Lynn. Maybe they go after a depth option like Kyle Gibson, who is throwing and trying to be ready to go by opening day. He was up to 60 pitches about a week ago, from what we heard from his camp. Maybe that'd be one way they go to try to solve some innings issues in the first of the year and give them some depth as they try to navigate this injury-riddled rotation right now. Then you still have to consider the Boston Red Sox. Garrett Crochet is now the best starter in that division. Let me repeat that. Garrett Crochet is now the best starter in that division. I still love Max Fried. I think he's just a tick below as far as stuff for what Garrett Crochet really offers. But the question I have for Garrett Crochet is he able to duplicate what he did last year? And I've seen nothing to tell me otherwise yet. We'll have to see how the rest of that rotation figures itself out in Boston with Bayo and Giolito trying to work their way back from injury. Sounds like Bayo might miss a few weeks of the start of the season, kind of like Luis Gil. Luis Gil sounds like he'll be out just a touch longer than Bayo, though. Giolito is working his way back from injury, but the one thing the Red Sox did that the Yankees did not is they addressed depth in their starting rotation. Pablo Sandoval, they brought in Walker Buehler, they brought in a couple other guys that could be, starting pitchers for them this season. And they had some good starting pitching options already with them last year that they can fall back on if necessary. They have a lot more depth than what the Yankees have. Now, would I say the top-end talent is a little bit better with the Yankees when you have kind of a three-headed kind of group that you have with the Yankees that you'd consider very similar, Rodon, Fried, and Heel when they're healthy? I would say that top end is probably a little bit better, but I think their 1 through 5 in Boston should be able to hold down the fort once we get Bayo back in that rotation. Like I said, it's going to be early in April, mid to late April, actually. Excuse me. Now, as far as that lineup, the one thing that they did that the Yankees did not is they addressed an impact bat into that lineup in Alex Bregman. They beat the Yankees out on that one. In fact, the Yankees didn't even really try for it. And I thought that would have been a difference-making bat for the Yankees this offseason. He would have been a difference-making offensive piece to kind of mitigate the loss and the playoff abilities of a Juan Soto. Now he goes to Boston, where he's absolutely mashed. I think he's the second best hitter all time in Fenway Park history. I think Ted Williams is the only hitter above him. Tells you how big of an acquisition this is going to be for the Boston Red Sox. Now, am I expecting him to be the second coming of Ted Williams in a Boston Red Sox uniform? No, I'm expecting some regression there. But what I am saying is that this Boston Red Sox team has a lot more depth in that lineup now than what the Yankees have as well. You look at some of the minor leaguers that are coming up, some of the top prospects in the game. Crawford at second base. Anthony in the outfield. Hopefully he's finally over his illness where he dropped 10 pounds due to that stomach virus that he had in spring training. I imagine they'll be patient with him coming up. But he was my pick to get the American League Rookie of the Year this year. I think that Boston Red Sox team is going to be quite formidable, and they still have the ability to go out there and do more financially. Meanwhile, the Yankees have basically been tapped out as far as finances for what they're willing to do. And remember, the reason why the Padres finance guys are looking to offload Dylan Cease is to save money. So the Yankees would have to change course as far as their thought process on Dylan, as far as adding money, to be able to bring in another starting pitcher of Dylan Cease's caliber to begin with. Now, of course, they could offload Marcus Stroman's salary. Been advocating for that all offseason. Use that money, bring in a bat before the injury to Gerrit Cole. Bring in a couple of guys like Jose Urena that we saw go to the New York Mets. Players along those lines that could fill some depth roles for you in a long relief, give you some options to turn to should injuries arise. And boy, have they. Mets, meanwhile, did go out there and add Jose Urena. I still think they need one more depth guy to at least get through the first parts of the season, but I think they should be relatively fine overall. I think their big addition to that starting rotation will happen at the trade deadline, whereas the Yankees, I can't say that because I don't know how much they're willing to spend on this team. They showed very aggressively they were not willing to go above a certain point financially this offseason, and now with the injuries, I don't see why that would change the picture. Maybe if think you still have a chance to win a World Series by the time you get to the All-Star break, they say, hey, maybe the season isn't lost after all. Maybe you do get good news on the second opinion for Gerrit Cole and he tries to pull a Tanaka and not do the Tommy John surgery and try to figure it out with that elbow. But those are pie in the sky, less than a morsel of a 1% chance of anything of those happening there for the Yankees. The more realistic option here for the Yankees is that they're still a good team. They still have good pieces on this roster. They'll still be competitive. They'll be around 500 for the majority of this season, even as currently constructed. That they're not going to add significant payroll, and because of that reason there is part of the reason why I don't think they're going to make a big addition like a Dylan Cease, at least until the trade deadline, whenever their front office might pressure the ownership group there to be willing to go above that threshold so that they can get another chance at winning a World Series. But again, that's 2-3 months away from now, and that might not even be a chance at that point. But looking at this team for the Yankees, Gerrit Cole's injury really does put at least a couple of nails in the 2025 season for the New York Yankees. Hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully the imaging and the recommendation were completely off base. There's still some hope for that. If that second opinion goes their way. Is it likely? No. And so we need to start making some realistic decisions here. If I was in the New York Yankees front office, I would already be on the phone to a couple of free agent starting pitchers saying, hey, Kyle Gibson, I know you're looking for a place where you're guaranteed to make some starts this season. I know we have Luis Gil coming back, but once we get you in our system here, when Gil comes back from injury, Stroman is the guy that will go back to the pen. You will stay in the starting rotation. If Stroman doesn't like it, we will ship him out of town so fast his head will spin. That would be the first call I make. The next call I make is to Lance Lynn and say, hey, buddy, you were a great pitcher for us here in New York. Great in quotation marks. You've had ups and downs in your career since you left. You're a completely different pitcher than what you were at the end of last season anyway. Sounds like you've lost 30 pounds. How quickly can we get you to New York to sign a contract? Those would be my first two calls to at least solve some of the innings disparities that they're going to have to begin the year. And then, again, once you get to the trade deadline, all-star break range, somewhere in there, you look up and you say, hey, Red Sox are 10 games above 500. Orioles are 8 games above 500. We're the Yankees. We're 8 games behind that, right at 500. We're 10 games out from the division. We look at the wild card race, and we're only 3 games back at the last wild card. Maybe you want to make one last crack at it and try to win a wild card spot. If that's the thought process there, if the standards have changed for the Yankees and it's no longer World Series or bust as far as how they measure success, then I could make an argument for them to make a decision like that and add a significant piece. But this is the Yankees. This is a team that's known to set their standards very, very high, that they want to win the World Series. That's how they measure success. They don't hang banners for division championships. They don't hang banners for wild card appearances. They measure success by the number of titles they win, by the World Series rings they have. And unless that's changed, I think the Yankees are in for a long season. And like I said, remember the one time they did sell before, about 10 years ago? They really took advantage of that time and got a king's ransom for their pieces that they sold. They turned that into the next decade of success that they've enjoyed. Now you could argue about the pieces that they brought in after that. The decision to bring in Giancarlo Stanton, how they spent their money, the types of players that they chose to go after. You could argue all of those things. But the one thing you could say is that the Yankees, when they sell well, and this might be the best path forward for the Yankees this season. All right, I know I've got several comments right now that I haven't gotten to, so I'll try to breeze through a couple of these. If you guys want to send a super chat, make sure we get to your comment. I'll try to keep up on those as well. But let's try to get through this thing here. I bet they would like King. I would agree. Again, King has played in New York before. Orlando Rays 2027, Hank. Honestly, that is one thought that's already entered Major League Baseball's mind. They would like them to move to a more metropolitan area, and that is one such scenario there. Gavo, welcome in. Yankees farm system ranked 25th in MLB. They couldn't trade for a bat boy. That's a funny one. First time I think I've seen you in our chat. Really do appreciate you joining us. But I will say the Yankees, the one thing that they do really well when they decide to make trades is that they manage to hold on to their top end pieces. Now, does that work out for their best case scenario for them? Well, when you look at the Joey Gallo trade, not so much. I mean, 3 of the 4 guys have already reached the major leagues. The last one there is in AAA for the Texas Rangers and could be on the major league roster this year. That trade did not go very well for the Yankees. I think every Yankees fan would attest to that. But just because their farm system's at 25, I don't think would preclude them for doing the quantity over quality approach to a trade to get a piece like they would want in a Dylan Cease or someone of that ilk. Let's see here. Got several comments. Caminero is going to be fun to watch for the Rays. That's the whole reason to watch the Rays this year, is watching his ascent to be in that same contention for AL Rookie of the Year. It's going to be the Caminero, Junior Caminero show in Tampa Bay. Yankees farm system is weak. Pulling off a blockbuster would be difficult. Maybe getting a 4 or 5 is possible. I'd say a 4 or 5 is possible right now in free agency. Like I mentioned, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, a couple other depth options out there. Are they a long-term solution for you 3 years from now? Heck no. But at least they'd be able to get you some innings early in the year. Orlando Rays, yeah, I mean, it doesn't look horrible. Let's see, David. Yankees just had the Rookie of the Year and second runner-up Rookie of the Year. Again, that Rookie of the Year guy is going to start the season on the injured list, and they just don't have a lot left that they can turn to for that starting staff to solve the issues of Gerrit Cole. Certainly nobody of his caliber. Gerrit Cole is kind of one of a kind for them. It'd be a difficult piece for them to try to square off. The trade that I made here for Dylan Cease would still be a lesser piece than Gerrit Cole, and even going into the year. While I did like the Yankees to get to the ALCS, I did have the Yankees as a team to win the American League East. Even making this trade in a vacuum, going into this year, if they had all their pieces healthy, I'm not sure Dylan Cease at the top replacing Gerrit Cole would still have them winning the division, even if they had Heel healthy and they had Stanton healthy. But they're going to be without those 2 pieces. They're maxed out financially. They might not even be able to make this move as well. It's going to be an interesting year for the Yankees. Now, I'm sure they'll get some insurance money back on Gerrit Cole. I'm assuming they have insurance back on it. But that'd be one way that they could at least afford a Dylan Cease, is if that insurance money covered some of their costs. But remember, the tax dollars that come with that trade for Dylan Cease is not just the contract for Dylan Cease. It's that tax money that you're going to have to pay along with it for acquiring him. That's a lot of bread that they're going to have to be giving out there to bring in a piece like this, even at $14-ish million for Dylan Cease. Just think about the other pitchers around the league that are making $20, $25 million. That would be even better options for them to go after. That might not be available yet. Let's see here. Gavo. Okay, David, so trade them for number 5 starter. I don't think they would do that. I mean, they'd rather hold on to their young talent. Alex Verdugo will tell the Yankees he can pitch. He's still looking for work. He is one player I thought should have signed already. I thought the Astros should have been the team to go after him and possibly be the fill-in there for Kyle Tucker. May still happen, but they're very limited with their finances. I'm sure he's looking for more guaranteed money. And with the injury now to Giancarlo Stanton, maybe they revisit the idea of the outfield market to at least give some more depth, some type of an option to that group there in New York as well. Let's see here. I heard Stanton is getting double elbow amputation. I don't know about amputation, but double elbow surgery is likely. He's tried the cortisone shots and so forth. I saw a couple of articles detailing those. But that's going to be an ongoing thing. He's expected to miss some time. He has severe elbow damage right now, and he very well could be on the shelf for the entirety of the season. Heel, thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate that. I know it's not a lot, but thank you so much for this. Absolutely, my friend. I try to enjoy a lot of baseball with you guys every single night. That's why the show is called MLB Hot Stove Daily. So be sure to hit the like on the video. The hearts are nice, but make sure you hit that thumbs up and like the video. Those really do generate a lot of success for us here at the Upside. So thank you so much for doing that if you wouldn't mind. Heel, can you do something like Yankees get Luis Castillo for someone like Ben Rice included? Well, here's the thing, Heel. The Mariners have made it very clear they are not trading Luis Castillo. So I would do it, but it's not going to be a reality thing. They want to stick with that starting rotation come hell or high water. There was a thought process early in the offseason that maybe Luis Castillo could be moved. And basically, the ownership group there said, hey, we're only spending $15 million. And the front office there thought about the idea of using Luis Castillo as a trade piece to increase the money that they could spend in free agency. Now, the only reason to trade Luis Castillo is to get equal money coming back in. There is no reason to give up on the greatest rotation the Seattle Mariners have ever had. And now with George Kirby missing some time going on the injured list to begin the year, their need to keep him has never been higher. So they're going to keep Luis Castillo. Otherwise, I would do a trade for you there. Maybe they could do a trade centered around Ben Rice to go back the other direction. If Seattle becomes a seller at the deadline, maybe that would be a piece that they could try to acquire. But again, the money there on Luis Castillo would have to be an ownership approval thing. Hal Steinbrenner would have to be willing to go above the luxury or the Steve Cohen tax to be able to get that done as well. Steven, everyone is looking at Alcantara, not just the Yankees. I'm sure my Mets are looking also. I'm sure the Orioles are looking. I'm sure the Dodgers, who look absolutely... Oh, that rotation looks really good out there in LA. I'm sure they are looking at it as well. One, because they would love to have him in their starting rotation, and two, it keeps him from pitching against them in a postseason series. I'm sure they realize that. And they have tons of prospects that actually line up with what the Mariners are looking for a whole lot better than what the Yankees have, the Orioles have. Mets have some prospects that could work in a deal there, but I'm sure that's not the only teams that are at least going to kick the tires on a Sandy Alcantara trade. Let's see here. Stanton getting double Tommy John from not even pitching. That is entirely possible. I haven't heard specifically the surgery that would be needed, but it wouldn't be surprising if that was indeed the case. If I remember correctly, wasn't it Bryce Harper who had to get that as well and missed some time anyway? I think that was the player that I'm thinking of that had to get it at one point. Mets getting Alcantara, I think that would be a good option for them. Mets rotation is trash. It's not necessarily great. I will put it that way. They still have a good one in Senga. I think they could use an even better one, though, and I think they will get it at the trade deadline. Alcantara would be a great one for them. Let's see here. David, I'm not giving away all those prospects for Cease. Well, if you're not going to do it, somebody else is going to have to. I'll put it that way. Their asking price for from the Orioles was almost double what this would have been. And if you're not willing to give up these prospects for Dylan Cease, he ain't coming your way. You're going to have to go with the lower cost option here. Pablo Lopez, you certainly ain't going to be able to get either for this package of prospects. You ain't getting Sandy Alcantara for this package of prospects. So if you're looking to stay in contention and you're looking to bring in a pitcher at least that could fill the shoes temporarily for Gerrit Cole, this might be your best and only option at this point. All right, you're lucky to crack 500. I think right now they're a 500 team. I don't necessarily think they're lucky. I think that's right about where they should be. I do like Max Fried. I do like some of the pieces that they have. But I don't think they're necessarily a winning ball club, if that makes sense. I don't think that they're winning 2 out of 3 every single series. They don't have that starting rotation right now that can be able to lock it down for a couple of wins guaranteed every series. They don't have the lineup that can carry them when their starting pitching falters like they did last year with Juan Soto. And I think they're a better overall team as far as the pieces that they have, sure. But I think the top-end talent has now gone away to the point where, with Gerrit Cole's injury, that significantly lowers my expectation for where this team is. I don't think they're nearly as good as a team as they were as they were at the beginning of spring training this year. And as a result, it's really going to affect where I put them entering the season as far as my projections. Remember, we did kind of our season preview show. We did a lot of rankings for where we place each team's lineup, their rotation, and their bullpen. Yankees have seen hits to both their lineup and their rotation now, and it could go very, very poorly very, very quickly. Heel, don't forget Dave Roberts is still a bad manager that is an expert at breaking more arms than a UFC fighter. I don't know. Dave Roberts did just get a World Series ring, his second one since being there in LA. And while some people would argue the way he utilizes his pitchers leaves something to be desired, I'll agree there. I would say he's got more arms to work with, that even if he breaks a few eggs, he's still going to get an omelet. I'll put it that way. Let's see here. Audrey, welcome in. First time I think I've seen you in here, but appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe and join us here at the Upside every single evening throughout the season for our MLB Hot Stove Daily. Let's go bigger with the Padres. Add a rise and cash considerations. The Padres aren't going to be adding cash to that one. They're looking to save cash. That's the only reason why they're willing to do that type of a move. That's the only reason why they'd be willing to move on from Dylan Cease. Wow, that's a high-scoring game. Sorry, I just saw the Timberwolves final score versus the Spurs. That was high-scoring. Anyway, Yankees still winning the AL. For your sake, I hope so for you, David. I'm not going to say no to that one, but I will say this. It's highly unlikely, and there are probably 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 teams I would pick before the Yankees at this point, before I even consider the Yankees being a legitimate option to get there. I'll put it that way. I'd say the Rangers are prohibitively better right now. I'd say the Astros, even with their losses and how I view their team overall not being nearly as good as in years past, I would still say they are in a better spot now without Gerrit Cole for the Yankees than where the Yankees are. As far as the Red Sox, I think they're in better shape. I think the Orioles now don't have to worry about facing Gerrit Cole in a playoff series. They might be able to sneak past you in a playoff series because you don't have Gerrit Cole. There's just so many teams out there that it's going to be tough for the Yankees to really stay afloat. As much as I think that they're still a 500 team, I think it's going to be hard for them to get above that point this year. All right, Cease, Arise, cash considerations for the 4 prospects. Again, like I said, I just don't think that the Padres are willing to include any cash in this. Remember, the reason why they're even thinking about making these moves is to offload the cash. They want Major League talent back, and they're not willing to eat salary in order to do it. So that wouldn't happen there, Audrey. Go Yankees. Let's get the likes up. Well, yeah, absolutely. Let's see how many likes we can get here. Appreciate those of you who have already liked the video. Steven, my Mets lost Alvarez for 6 to 8 weeks. That is true. I did see that one come off the wire today. Hopefully they get him back on the earlier side of that. But again, catching is down across the sport. So while they do have one of the better offensive catchers in the league, they were not necessarily going to be that far off from what Major League passable hitting is at the catcher spot. They're not going to be that big of a downgrade as far as compared to other teams. Now, as far as the hit to their lineup, that's why you bring back a Pete Alonso. That's why you bring in a Juan Soto to elevate this team above that point. Now, are they going to still feel the sting of Alvarez not being there? Absolutely. Will they want him to come back early? Absolutely. But the Mets not having Alvarez will sting them this year, at least in the first couple of months. I would hope for an early June for him to come back, maybe late May, but I'd be hoping early June to not have a setback or anything along those lines. Remember, he's probably going to need a little bit of a rehab stint to get him back into his conditioning back, but we'll see how things go. Mark, hope the Rangers get Duran from the Twins. If it doesn't cost Leiter or Rocker, can you trade Sim for that, please? I can go ahead and do that one for you guys. We've actually done a couple of trades like that already, and one guy who's not expected to be on the opening day lineup for the Texas Rangers could ultimately be in this trade here. One that you guys might not be expecting. I think we've done this one a few times before, so if you've watched this show a lot, you'll recognize some of the names that are familiar in this deal. But Duran has a value of around 26 entering the season. Twins are looking for at least very low-cost Major League talent, or at least close to it, coming back. And let's see here. I think Josh Smith would be the first guy that would make sense for them. Still 4 years left of control. I think he would fill in where Willie Castro is in their lineup. Maybe even fill in over at third, depending on what they decide to do. But I think for right now, Smith would probably be a better player for them up the middle every single day, whereas on Texas, he doesn't have a spot in their lineup right now. He's a really good utility player for them. He's going to bounce all over the diamond, which means he's expendable, and his value is so much higher than Ezekiel Duran's right now, he would be the valuable piece going out. Now, you're going to have to include more. You're at 26 versus 15. You're going to need about 11, maybe 12 more. They are looking for some good, close to MLB talent. If you're not going to include Leiter, which I don't think they would in this deal anyway, Leiter's really impressed so far in spring. Dreiling, I think, would be one of the first pieces that could go out the door. I don't think they're going to trade Castillo. I don't think they're going to trade Santos. Osuna's really made a nice impression on the Major League staff already. I think he could get a call-up at some point in the next year or two for them. You're not going to trade Malcolm Moore. But if we're looking for about $4 more, where could we get it from? Teodo, who could be on this Major League roster at some point. Cauley could be a nice piece for them. They have lots of middle infield depth already. He's got a nice upside, though, as well. Cauley could be the piece, and then I'll go down just a little bit to page 3 here and give him a guy off the 40-man roster that would probably be in their bullpen as a long reliever, or an out-of-options guy in Cole Winn. That'd clear up another 40-man roster spot for Texas. That's pretty close. 2 guys immediately go on to the Major League roster for the Twins. Somebody that probably would go in a middle relief option for them would be Cole Winn. Smith would be an everyday player for them, and then they'd get a couple of older-ish, 21-year-old prospects there in Dreiling and Cauley. Not too bad of a trade. Validate and post. That way you guys can see it whenever you visit baseballtradevalues.com. All right, let's keep this thing going. Gavo, let's go Mets. Al, maybe Cole is checking on the internal brace procedure instead of Tommy John. That's always possible. I think ultimately, though, it's looking like his season is very much in jeopardy. At very least, let's say he does get that internal brace procedure, or he does, some type of other situation where he might not need the Tommy John. I think conservatively, we're looking at him missing at least the month of April. We're probably looking at him missing the month of May. I'd say best case scenario, not being a doctor here, that you could hope, wish upon a star, cross your fingers, salt over the shoulder, all that kind of stuff. I think best case scenario, you're probably looking June-ish, June, July, if he didn't need the Tommy John surgery. Or if you decide to do the Masaharu Tanaka way and just rest it and just see if it would heal on its own. That's another way as well. Guys like Wells, Chisholm, Dominguez are being overlooked. I'll put it this way. I'm not expecting Wells to be MVP Wells. I'm not expecting Chisholm to be MVP Jazz Chisholm. I'm not expecting Jason Dominguez to be MVP Jason Dominguez. I am expecting Dominguez to be a decent bat for them. Am I expecting him to be one of the league's 20 to 30 best bats? Certainly not. Am I expecting Wells to be in that category? Heck no. Jazz Chisholm was barely above a league average player at the time they traded for him last year. And why did they make that move? Because they needed above average, or at least league average players, because that's how bad the offense was before they brought him in. Now you're going to be without Giancarlo Stanton. You bring in Goldschmidt, you bring in Bellinger. You still have Dominguez, I'll give you that one. Still got some good production there. But I would argue that other teams, while Dominguez has a very bright future, would prefer a more veteran guy out there with a more proven track record of success. And maybe he elevates even higher than that. But for this Yankees team, to say that the loss of Gerrit Cole, to say that the loss of Luis Gil, to say that the loss of Giancarlo Stanton is not going to just derail the season right before it's even begun, I think you'd be missing something here if you're a Yankees fan. Now, sure, you might get a AL Rookie of the Year, one of the best improved players ever in Jazz Chisholm type of seasons. Wells might be the Swiss Army knife that you need on that roster. But do you think he's going to be the second coming of Aaron Judge on this roster? I don't think so. I think Jason Dominguez, even if he has a good season, let's say, things go the way that the luckiest, most rose-colored outlook that you could see for the Yankees team, that Jason Dominguez has that level of season. Is it to the level of what Juan Soto did for them last year? Certainly not. Is it going to be the level of what Bellinger's going to do for them this year? I'd say best case scenario, you get a second Cody Bellinger in that lineup. I think it's probably best case scenario for Jason Dominguez this year. And that would be a good year for him. Not to say that that's, where his ceiling's going to be, but that would be a good year for the Yankees if they could get that level of production out of Jason Dominguez. But is that enough to weather the storm offensively of what they already had? I think they were going to need that type of season from him anyway, just to get back to where they were last year with Juan Soto. And now you're saying you're going to be without Giancarlo Stanton? I just think there's a lot of not taking into account the full weight of the injuries that they have on that roster right now. And if that second opinion comes back, like I'm expecting it to, and say, yeah, you are probably going to need that Tommy John, my friend. If he does miss the entire season, I think we can write the book as far as the division for the Yankees. I think for the wild card, I still think they'll be in it. I think there's a decent chance that they could still be one of those teams that gets the wild card. But again, success for the Yankees is not measured by a wild card. It's measured by World Series victories. And you're telling me a team that's, the best rotation in the business in the Los Angeles Dodgers, the best bullpen in the business in the Los Angeles Dodgers, the best lineup in the business in the Los Angeles Dodgers. You're saying that even with or without Gerrit Cole, Giancarlo Stanton, Luis Gil to start the season, very likely some of those guys will miss significantly more time than that. You're saying that even without those guys, you still believe that the Yankees, as currently built, are going to be able to compete and win in a series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. On paper, that's not possible. But I will say David does beat Goliath. And like I've been saying all this offseason long, you always have a chance. If that team doesn't play up to its standards, if you play above your head, maybe you can win the series. But I think without Gerrit Cole, you have nobody to match at the number one for the Yankees, or with the Dodgers right now. And the rest of that rotation, Rodon, Fried, Heel, etc., I think you're looking at a disadvantage every time you start the game. Those starting pitchers are really good, but the Dodgers are better. Blake Snell, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Ohtani when he gets healthy, Kershaw when he gets healthy. They have so many options that they can go to, and I haven't even mentioned Sasaki. Who knows which pitchers are going to be pitching to a sub-3 ERA for them. I'm sure they'll have some poor performances, but I'm sure they'll figure out those guys early enough in the year that they'll have the best starting rotation once we get to October. And yes, there are some teams that could be very, very similar as far as that rotation. But that bullpen ain't even close to the Dodgers. And that lineup ain't touching the Dodgers either. And I still think that there's some really good talent out there for the Yankees. That's why I still think they're going to be a team that's going to be in wild card contention. I'm sure we'll still see all kinds of articles about whether or not the Yankees should buy or sell at the deadline, and it'll get a bunch of clicks. I'm sure even I will make some videos about, hey, the Yankees have won 5 out of their last 7. They're, 34-34. We're getting close to the All-Star break. Should they be a team that buys at the deadline? They put a nice heroic effort out there after losing Gerrit Cole to Tommy John for the season. I'm sure I will be one of those guys making that video, and I will say the same thing all over again. You're not going to be able to make an addition that replaces Gerrit Cole in your rotation. You're just not. Alrighty, Steven, well, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that one. At least they can have facial hair. Thank you, my friend. Yeah, it's been nice getting back to talking actual baseball, what we're actually getting to as well. Injuries, we wish it wasn't a part of the sport. Like I said, I want to see every single team be as healthy as possible when we get to face them. If I'm a Rangers fan, I want to go up against the best teams out there. And I want to cheer for my team and hope they win, not based on how many injuries you have. I want them to win because they win the actual game. I never want to see a win or something along those lines because the other team couldn't compete from a health perspective. For instance, the Phoenix Suns tonight, the Dallas Mavericks were so decimated with injuries tonight, they couldn't substitute anybody in for the final 6 minutes of the game. They had 2 players on minutes restrictions after they had just come back from long-term injuries, and 2 players banged into each other. One needed 7 stitches to his head. Another one had to get some stitches in the locker room before he came back out, just so that they have enough players on the floor for the finish of the game. If I'm a Phoenix Suns fan, do I want to win that way? No. I want to win because Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal showed the prolific shooting that they have on that team, and that they can score and outscore everybody in the gym and be able to win a game that way. I don't want to win because Dallas traded away Luka Doncic and had a whole traded for an injured player in Anthony Davis, and their centers are all out, and they have not enough players to even field a team by the end of the game, and they're barely fielding enough players to even have the league minimum players to start the game to begin with. I don't want to win that way. If I'm a Suns fan, I'll take the victory. I don't want to see them lose to that team, absolutely. But I'm not sitting there going, all right, NBA Finals, here we come because we beat an injury-riddled Dallas Mavericks team and barely won. Same thing here in baseball. I don't want to win if I'm the Texas Rangers because the other team didn't have enough players, didn't have enough starting pitching because the injuries had decimated their starting staff. I want to see Jacob deGrom versus Gerrit Cole in a playoff series. That would be fantastic. Can you imagine that game? How many of you guys would watch a game with a healthy Jacob deGrom and a healthy Gerrit Cole? That'd be a fantastic pitching matchup. One of the best we could actually see in baseball right now. And it looks like we're not going to get it again this year. That could have been your ALCS this year. That was the ALCS I was rooting for. And we ain't going to get it. And, like I said, I want to see players be healthy. It's just a fact of sport. Injuries happen. You wish they didn't, but this is the type of injury that can derail seasons, that can cost people jobs, their career, and their livelihood. So Yankees, I think, are going to be a tough out to be out of the wild card contention. I still think they're going to have a good enough rotation to hang around in that wild card picture. So I'm there with you, David, that I think they have a good enough roster to where they'll hang around for wild card contention. But I think that's where we differ, is that you believe that talent is good enough to get them to the World Series and win the World Series. I don't think they're in that same picture anymore. I think the injuries now have started to riddle or stack up a little bit too much. The finances are already maxed out, and they're still going to have to trim a little bit of money to get where Hal Steinbrenner wants them to be. And you're wanting them to add another starting pitcher here, it just doesn't look that likely. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these other chats here. So what's the internal brace going to do? He still won't be back this season. He was a power pitcher, so unless he's planning on blowing that brace out, he's not pitching this year. That's kind of my thoughts as well. I do think he'll end up with the Tommy John. David, it's the Yankees are going to be just fine. I will say the Yankees are going to be at least around that 500 picture all season. Do I think they're going to be a 40-win ball club like the White Sox last year? No, they're still a good team. I do like the addition of Max Fried. I love the addition of Bellinger for them. Devin Williams is a nice closer. They still have a good roster overall. And they're going to beat the teams that they should beat. Are they going to beat the teams like the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles with regularity? Probably not. That's where their limitations really come into play, and that's why they're a 500 team to me. I knew it was over for Cole when he got injured last year. Let's see, Yankees will give you Jack Leiter for Cody Bellinger. Sounds fair to me, and you get pitching. I wouldn't do that deal if I was Texas, that's for sure. I want the future of Jack Leiter than I would the money going to Cody Bellinger anyway. Give me Jack Leiter all day long. All right, let's see here. Nando, the Padres hang banners for beating the Dodgers during the regular season series. I haven't seen those banners, but I know their fan base certainly gets up in arms about it. Gavo, Yankees are a high strikeout team anyway, Jazz, Bellinger, and Dominguez. That's kind of what they've always been, though, over the last 6 or 7 years. That's kind of what I said about the last time that they sold was about 10 years ago, and they did really, really well with it. The problem I had is how they built the team afterward. Basically going all slug, all power, very little athleticism. They were a slugging team, and that's how they chose to build their ball club. They went the 3 true outcomes route, and they lost that athleticism, lost the speed on the base paths. They went power arms and that kind of a thing, and it still hasn't resulted in the success that they were looking for there. Try McClanahan to the Yankees trade, please. We can go ahead and try that one. Welcome in, Michael. Been a minute since I've seen you. Gerrit Cole hurt his elbow covering first base. I did not see the actual injury myself. That sucks if that's how he injured it. That sucks. All right, let's go ahead and do that trade that you mentioned there. Like I said, I'm expecting the Rays to not necessarily be a playoff contender this year. I think they'll be in that wild card mix, likely until the final couple weeks of the year. But let's see what we could do if you're doing an in-division trade between the two. Now remember, you'd want to make sure McClanahan bounces back healthy, so that would be one big caveat, of course. But what value does he have? McClanahan, 3 years left, 57 is his value. This is going to be expensive for the Yankees, especially since it's in the division, so you're definitely going to have to pay through the nose. All right, so you're not including Dominguez, Volpe, Heel. Lombard would have to be a must. You'd have to include Jones. There's no other way this trade could really get done. Warren, and let's do Arias and just see how close we are. We're still 12 short, and that's 4 good prospects there. Ouch. Let's go back to the Rays. What negative assets do they have that maybe you could take off their hands? They don't have any. All right. Let's go about it another way. What other piece that the Rays have that you could use that wouldn't be so valuable? Again, you'd have to be willing to take on salary to do it. Let's go with the majors. Expiring deals. Jansen at catcher, maybe. Starting pitcher, maybe. Diaz and Lau would really have to include the prospect haul as well. Kim they just acquired. You're not getting rid of him. I'm looking for big salaries here. Kim is the biggest one. Nobody else really fits for them to be able to do it, so that's going to be a tough get. So the Yankees would probably have to finish off this trade with another piece around that 12-ish range. You'd probably have to put in Clark Schmidt. Say you keep Jones, and that's, it gets you a better starting pitcher. Maybe then go back to the Rays. Look at their starting pitchers. Maybe get a Zach Little. Gets you 2 starters. And then you throw in another piece like a Lelane. That's pretty close. 5 pieces, 1 major league starter in exchange for 2 starters. I wouldn't do it, but that would be at least a trade that would get you close there. Heel. We'll validate and post it. Would I do this trade if I was the Yankees? Honestly, this is kind of the worst case scenario for the Yankees, the way they like to build up their farm system. They're both giving away the quantity and the quality in this trade. I would probably not do this trade if I was the Yankees. I would be looking for some cheaper starting pitcher options. I'd be looking for negative assets somewhere, somebody that could be a number 2 or 3 starter in my rotation that I would be able to take on for next to nothing. Think of like a Marcus Stroman type of a piece if you're willing to eat the salary. That'd be one way to do it. Another one would be to go for like an Eric Fetty from the Cardinals. Again, that doesn't fill the shoes of a Gerrit Cole, but at least gives you innings. Say Sonny Gray becomes available at the trade deadline. Maybe you go after him, a lower cost option to help solve your issues in your rotation. Again, you're not solving the hole here of Gerrit Cole. There's no one pitcher that you're going to be able to bring in that immediately solves the issue there. And again, I think if this injury does in fact turn out to be necessary for Tommy John, that their season is in effect over for what their goals were, which were winning a World Series. I think that dream, kiss it goodbye. It's not happening. I think you're looking at the New York Yankees and seeing still a very good team, a highly accomplished team in the past, a team with a lot of pride that will still try to go out there and win every single game. But ultimately, they just don't have the talent at the top now to get it done. Soto's out the door in free agency. You brought in a bunch of lesser pieces. That your thought process there was that by having slightly better improvements at all other spots in this team, that the high tide raises all boats, and that performance would lead to success in the postseason. I thought it would be better in the 162. I had my doubts about how it would perform in the postseason anyway. And now you have one of your best starting pitchers, your best starting pitcher in Gerrit Cole going down. It could be a very long year for the Yanks, especially compared to what they were hoping to be able to do. Mark, that trade I would do in a heartbeat if I was Texas. I wouldn't do Bellinger for lighter. I really would not do that deal. I mean, he only solves. Let me go ahead and kind of show you why I wouldn't do the deal. Yankees. Bellinger, 2 years, 47. That takes up a lot of your money that you have for spending next year on another starting pitcher. Let's go to the Rangers. Remember, they're trying to stay underneath the luxury tax. So the Yankees would basically have to eat almost the entirety of his deal. That would make it worth it to the Rangers at that point. But again, where would he play? Where would you guys play him? You playing him in right field over Adolis? I wouldn't. Would you play him over Wyatt? I wouldn't. Would you play him in center? Maybe. Would you play him at first? Maybe. Let's say the Rangers or the Yankees included $7 million to make this worth it. Let's go ahead and throw 8 in there. Again, that pushes the Rangers above where they would want to be financially. And he doesn't really solve the issues on this team. That'd be my bigger issue with it as well. No thank you. I would want no part of this deal if I'm Texas. The future of Jack Leiter versus the next year plus of Bellinger, and I'm still going to have to pay him $35 million? No thank you. I'd rather save that money and go after a Vladdy next offseason, or a Kyle Tucker, or some other starting pitcher. There's so many starters that are going to be available this offseason. The Rangers could add another high-end pitcher like a Jacob deGrom to this rotation, and I think that's the route they will go. And hitting, especially spending money on hitting, when they already have younger players at the spots that are very comparable as far as what they'll give you to what Cody Bellinger is going to bring you, no thanks. I just would not want to do that one. In fact, I want to look at his numbers. Let me pull up the Yankees roster real quick. Just want to look at his numbers for you. Spring training is hitting very well, I will say that. 476, a couple home runs, 10 hits, and 21 at-bats. That's looking good if you're a Yankee fan. But again, looking at his numbers last year, 18 home runs, 266 average, a 751 OPS. That's not a player that's a difference maker over a Jake Berger or a Evan Carter or a Wyatt Langford. I'd rather go with the cheaper, cost-effective options, even though Bellinger may be better by a hair right now than a Jake Berger or by a hair over Evan Carter. I'd rather still give the playing time to Evan Carter and allow him to grow in that position. Alrighty, Rays might be a bit better team, low-key, than the Yankees. I don't think so. I still think their lineup leaves a lot to be desired. I think that rotation has a lot of options, but not necessarily the names that we're used to in it. And that bullpen is not nearly as good as it's been in the past either. Last try, Reed Detmers to the Yankees. We could do that one. He's their number 5, I believe, for the Angels. I know you meant the Duran trade for the closer. Oh, okay. I was going to say, Mark, I would do that trade for Johan Duran. I think it's Johan. Jean Duran? I'm not sure his first name, how to pronounce his first name from the Twins. The closer from the Twins. I got you there, Mark. I was going to say I would not do the Bellinger trade. I was a little worried there for a second there. All right, let's see. You said Reed Detmers. This will be the last one we do, I believe. If you guys want us to do one more, go ahead and send it in the chat before we finish up here. Clear out the trade. Angels. Yankees. Clear out the comments. Starting pitchers. Surplus. Soriano, they're number 2 right now. Where is Reed Detmers in this team? They do not have him there. Do they have him as a reliever? Am I just missing him? Did he go to another team? I thought he was the number 5 starter here. Yeah. Reed. There he is. Okay, they have him as a long relief pitcher. Okay. I was going to say, that was kind of weird for a second there. All right, so Detmer's a little bit lower cost effective. Again, he doesn't really solve, the long-term issues, and he might be a little expensive for what you're looking for, but it would be less of a cost of everything else that you've looked at so far. So maybe your headliner could be, I think Lombard would probably be your headliner. Arias might be a little expensive then. So maybe then you do Lelane. And I know they've had interest in Ben Rice, but I think they would want starting pitching back instead. So you put Selvage in this deal. You get a little expensive, so you go back to the Angels. Let me clear this out. Go to the major side of things. Moncada, that would be an interesting piece for them. Burke would be an interesting piece. I think Rengifo would be an even better one. So you bring in Rengifo to help out your infield mix there as well. You take out Selvage. You need about 14 from the Yanks. Arias would probably have to be in this deal. How close do you get? About 5 away. Maybe Ben Rice would have to be in this deal. That'd be a little too rich for Rengifo's addition. So you do Selvage and Perez, I guess. How close do we get there? We're a little above. Take him out. Say the Yankees throw a little bit of cash back the other way for some reason to the Angels to equal out the trade. But this is pretty close. Would I do it? Probably not. I think I'd still probably lean with just Detmers. Take out Selvage, you put in another $3-ish million piece. Say you do Schindler. There you go. That's a close deal. That would at least get you a fill-in there for the Yankees. This would be a trade that could work. I'll go ahead and do one more trade. If I were in the front office for the Yankees and I'm dead set on trying to find a starting pitcher, that I'm delusional enough to think that Gerrit Cole can be replaced in my rotation. One, he can't. He's Gerrit Cole. There's no player out there that you're going to get that gives you the production of Gerrit Cole and not break the bank for Hal Steinbrenner. But let's say that I get Hal Steinbrenner to okay a little bit of cash to bring in a starting pitcher so we can still at least be competitive and maybe get to the World Series. Let's say that I am thinking along those lines. I'm looking for a starting pitcher. I'm looking for at least a guy in the 1, 2, 3 range of some starting rotation. Kikuchi is the best starting pitcher from the Angels. I probably would lean away from that one. Detmers might be the better piece there long-term for the Yankees, but again, I'm looking for better. Astros, they're limited with their starting pitchers anyway. Same thing with the A's. Blue Jays at the deadline could be a team. Braves aren't trading away any of their starting pitcher. They're very limited. Same with the Brewers. Cardinals, maybe they go after Gray at the deadline. But again, I'm still looking for somebody that would be a solution. The Cubs, anyway, don't have enough starting pitchers for themselves. The Dodgers ain't going to help you out. The Diamondbacks, they could trade you Montgomery. That could be one piece. That'd be one team we can come back to as well. Giants, they're trying to win this year. They're not going to sell away a piece. Mariners, they're trying to keep their rotation together. Guardians, they have some nice pieces that they have, but nobody they're willing to give you for the pieces that you're willing to give up. Marlins are willing to trade a bunch of starting pitching. We could go there. Cabrera could be a piece. That's been one name that's been mentioned to the Yankees quite a few different times. Mets, they ain't trading anybody to the Yankees. Nationals don't have a starting pitcher that would work. Orioles ain't helping you out. Padres, Kings, Cease, maybe. Phillies ain't helping you out. Pirates ain't trading you the young starting pitching, and they don't necessarily fit the description of what I'm looking for. Rangers aren't trading their starting pitching. Rays, we already looked at McClanahan, the only starting pitcher that'd be worth it for me. Reds, I think they're looking to hold on to their starters and see who's worth it long term. They want to see what they have going forward. Red Sox certainly ain't helping you out. Rockies have nothing. Royals aren't trading anything away. Tigers at the deadline, if they're out of it, could be an option for, say, a Flaherty. Maybe you could convince them to trade away Scoball while he's at a peak of his powers. Twins are a nice spot for Pablo Lopez, Ober, Ryan as well. But outside of that, all those pieces are really expensive to try to acquire. It's going to cost a king's ransom to bring him in. White Sox have the worst rotation in all of baseball. Martin Perez looks like the opening day starter. It's very bleak there. And then, of course, you're the Yankees. You can't trade with yourself. So let's go back through these teams. We said the Diamondbacks could be one. We're going to look at the Majors roster. We're going to look at the starting pitchers. Burns, Gallen, Kelly, Montgomery, Fat, Rodriguez. I think you could get one of Kelly, Montgomery, or Rodriguez. They would love to sell you Rodriguez, save the salary. Same thing with Montgomery. But if I'm looking for a starting pitcher that is looking for a payday this offseason, and the Diamondbacks have their rotation pretty much set, and they say, hey, maybe we could maximize the value of Merrill Kelly since we brought in Corbin Burns, maybe that would be a way that you could go. Solve your rotation at least for this year. He's an older starting pitcher as well, so maybe you're able to sign him to an extension after the year. I think their preference would be to keep Zach Gallen anyway. But say you go after a Merrill Kelly. That would be a trade I think could be very interesting for both sides. Now remember, they're trying to stay in competition to win the division as well. They're trying to push for a World Series next to the Dodgers, so they still want to get some major league pieces back. So keep that in mind. While it's only going to be 7.7 here, it's going to have to be worth it for them to offload him. So what would you have to give up? There it goes. It finally updated. So around that 7-ish range, Lalane, Ben Rice. Ben Rice could be a nice piece, at least a major league piece. Is it worth Merrill Kelly? No. Let's see here. Flores, Hampton, Leiter. Nobody in that range really works. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Cabrera, no. Let's go at the major league roster first and just see who's really here. Stanton injured. Cole injured. Rodon, history of injury, and the reason why they're trading a starting pitcher is because they have the depth there. You're not trading away your starter. LeMahieu does nothing for the Diamondbacks. Stroman could have been a nice 1-for-1 there with Jordan Montgomery earlier this offseason. Ain't happening now. Just doesn't look like there's a piece here that the Diamondbacks would want in return. So you ain't going to be able to get Merrill Kelly. Take him out. Go back over to the Diamondbacks. And then you're left with the last two options, Rodriguez and Montgomery. Give me Montgomery out of those two options. And remember, they're going to have to eat roughly $15 million. That's been our working number all off season for Montgomery. As far as the cash that would go alongside him. Now you have roughly $4 that would go back to the Yankees. What would the Yankees have to give up that's around a 4 value? Well, that's where you get Ben Rice as Waldo Cabrera. I think you would hope to include Cabrera, but I think Ben Rice would probably be the ask. Peraza could be the ask as well. Let's say they do it for Peraza. Beater would be your long relief starting pitcher option out of your minor league system. I don't think they would include that one in this trade. Let's see here. Let's go with the prospects. What do they have for around $2 million for prospects? Quite a few. So you could include a young starting pitcher. That could be a nice piece to give them going forward. You're getting Peraza. let's say they go a little bit cheaper here and go into the around 1 million range. You get a reliever in Herring, an outfielder in Maya, and then you get a really low-cost prospect, 17-year-old third baseman. There's your lottery ticket. So basically, you give up 1 major leaguers for 3 nothing-ish pieces that could turn into lottery tickets for the Diamondbacks. Is there a reason why I would do this if I'm the Diamondbacks? I save a little bit of money. I bring in a positionally versatile player in Peraza, and I get 3 lottery tickets. If I'm the Yankees, obviously this helps my immediate need for a starting pitcher. Is there a big overriding need to make this trade if I'm the Diamondbacks? No. I would hope I'd make the most out of Montgomery to where I didn't have to eat as much of that salary. Maybe I can get some better prospects if he rehabs his value enough. So would I have to do this trade? No. But it could be a trade that works. It's not a horrible idea, though. Validate and post. Now let's say we go to the other team I mentioned. That would work in a deal here for the Yankees. And that was the Miami Marlins. Marlins have a couple of starting pitchers that they're looking to trade during the season. That was their plan last year. That ultimately blew up in their face due to poor performance and injury. They will be looking to trade multiple starters this year. And the Yankees, now's the time to go ahead and try to get it done earlier in the year. Now, Cabrera's been the one piece they've tried to bring in at numerous points over the past couple of years. And Gleyber Torres was thought to be one piece that could have worked for it. Starlin Castro was another one at one time. But maybe this is finally the time they get the deal done. So, only 13, so it's not going to cost you a king's ransom if you're the Yanks. So what would you have to give up? Well, they're going to want, again, young prospects. So your headliner in this deal would probably be Arias. You don't have to include Lombard, which would be great. They go Arias. Now you're looking for only around $5 million more as far as value. Again, we're looking 20 and under pieces. So Lelane could be a starting pitcher piece. But remember, they're looking more position player prospects. So Perez would probably be the ask first. Put him in the deal. How close do we get? We're about $1 million away from getting this deal done. Let's go to page 2. Let's say you do Francisco Velorio, and there's your trade. You get Edward Cabrera in exchange for Arias, Perez, and Velorio. Little bit of an overpay, but for a trade that you've been trying to get done for years, this might be what ultimately has to happen. And let's just say you reek of desperation right now if you're the Yankees for starting pitching. You're going to get reamed in any trade that you try to make for starting pitching right now. So, this trade honestly wouldn't be too bad, I would say, for the Yankees. You get a long-term starting pitcher, if healthy and if on his game, could be an answer for you as a 3-ish type of starter for this rotation. Is he Gerrit Cole? No. Are there going to be some delusional Yankees fans that say, all right, we get Cabrera, now we win the World Series? Absolutely. That's the same with any fan base out there. But looking at it realistically, this would be a nice stopgap solution. This would kind of be stop the bleeding, if I, to kind of, steal a phrase there, to stop the bleeding in that injury, for the injuries for the Yankees. But how many innings can you count on of Cabrera? How many high-level innings can you count on him? Remains to be seen. And we'll have to see how this works. Heel, do you think the Yankees trade for Tatis Jr.? They can offer the Padres Bellinger? No, I don't. I think Tatis is staying with the Padres. I think the time to try to get Tatis Jr. was a couple of years ago when the front office was upset right after he had been suspended for his immaturity, for his lack of taking care of himself in the offseason, lack of seeking medical treatment after getting into multiple motorcycle wrecks. And that was when the time would have been made to try to get that deal done. Not right now. I think Tatis is still a bright spot on that team and still could be a very nice piece for them going forward. You want Yuri Perez on the Rangers? He has ace-level stuff. It's going to cost a pretty penny. But we'll see if the Rangers do something like that. I think they're going to choose a more veteran option than Perez for some starting pitching, though. They do like starting pitching, but they also like their veteran starters when they do acquire them. I have not seen the Rangers, since Chris Young has been there, really go after young starters to be in the starting rotation. They like the veterans there. So, appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Been a little bit longer of a normal video for you guys. Told you guys we'd start changing the format here at the MLB Hot Stove Daily. This was not the direction I was planning on going. But with the breaking news tonight that Gerrit Cole had significant injury, and we finally got some clarity on that tonight, I told you guys we'd keep you guys updated on that one, and that we did. The other big news, of course, is Alvarez out for about 2 months due to an injury after having surgery. And then the last bit of news, the Rays are being pressured to sell the team, not just by the media, as has been the case for years, but now Major League Baseball, the commissioner, and several owners are now pressuring the Rays to get it done as well. Alrighty, appreciate you guys joining us. You guys have a great evening out there. I love CY Daniels, John Daniels, who I like both of those guys, man. I know Daniels doesn't get enough love from the Rangers faithful, but he was the GM that got him to the first World Series in franchise history. He deserves his flowers. He did a great job. He helped teach CY what to do in a front office. So you can at least thank John Daniels for helping CY learn the ropes in the Texas front office, if for no other reason than you love CY and love what he's become as the GM of Texas. John Daniels had a hand in helping develop his abilities as a GM, however little you think it might be. All right. Y'all have a great evening out there. Stay safe. We'll be with you guys tomorrow around 9. Have a good one, everybody.